We've grown accustomed to staring at flickering screens and seeing endless lightness there. For years, we've been diligently sold the fairy tale of the digital cloud, where information floats beyond the laws of physics. It seems that the modern internet is pure ether, invisible and utterly weightless. This pleasant illusion has become a solid foundation of our modern daily lives. But the technological cloud does not exist in nature. Behind every query you make lies a brutal, heavy, and deafeningly noisy industrial reality. It is not the ether, but millions of tons of concrete, steel, and copper devouring the planet's resources.
The internet is the most massive and demanding physical machine in human history.
These colossal, windowless hangars are not merely warehouses for servers. They are autonomous organisms designed to consume electricity and transform it into power. They dictate the landscape, subjugate rivers, and drain energy from neighboring cities. They are instruments of absolute geopolitical control, disguised as mundane civilian infrastructure. By the end of this journey, it will become clear why the digital world demands such real, physical sacrifices. We will understand how the struggle for a monopoly on the future has forced billionaires to build modern pyramids.
And why, for every millisecond of speed, we pay with real, tangible spatial ruin.
But it wasn't always this way. Let's go back to a time when the global network still fit within a single room, when information truly seemed light and its scale did not foreshadow the coming technological catastrophe, to the point where the body of the internet had only just begun to take shape from cables and hardware. The internet was born in dusty university labs and cramped basements of office buildings. The first servers were simply humming boxes, hidden out of sight in back rooms. No one back then thought about their specific architecture or global impact on the environment. They were mere appendages to the human workspace, requiring little attention. In the 1990s, the network grew chaotically and completely unnoticed by those around it. Telecommunications companies simply rented ordinary commercial floors in downtown areas of major cities. They set up tall racks of equipment where clerks had been sitting with papers just the day before.
It was an era of naive symbiosis, when humans and computers shared the same hallway.
But servers very quickly turned out to be extremely bad neighbors for living people. They required an absolutely stable power supply and constantly whirred with dozens of small fans. The human environment was too warm, too humid, and too unpredictable for them. Machines began slowly but surely to drive people out of their own buildings. The first major conflict of this scale occurred at the level of basic architectural physics. A standard office floor was not originally designed to support tons of vibrating metal per square meter. Concrete slabs began to sag alarmingly under the ever-increasing weight of metal server racks. Buildings designed for desks and chairs could not withstand the density of the nascent digital world. At the same time, the first invisible and relentless threat emerged: excessive heat. Any computing power inevitably turns into dense, scorching, and dry air. Standard home and office air conditioners broke down trying to cool these iron furnaces. The temperature in the sealed rooms rose and servers began to shut down due to overheating. Engineers tried to salvage the situation with brute force and whatever tools were at hand. They installed additional industrial fans and punched ugly holes in the walls for ventilation. Offices turned into humming wind tunnels where support staff had to shout. But this was only a temporary, desperate, and highly compromised solution to the problem. The body of the new industry found itself tightly squeezed into the old architectural corset of cities. Mega cities, with their expensive rent per square meter and outdated power grids, became a trap. The network was literally suffocating in the dense concrete jungles of New York, London, and San Francisco.
It urgently needed a completely different scale and total, absolute isolation from the human world.
A critical need arose for an entirely new form of physical existence. Large data arrays could no longer reside in repurposed former factory spaces. They required their own monumental temples, designed exclusively for a single technological purpose. The growing computing machine demanded absolute spatial autonomy. Infrastructure owners realized that trying to fit servers into the urban environment was pointless. Every new byte saved from overheating came at too high a cost in densely built-up areas. Form had to be entirely subservient to function, with no regard for aesthetics or human comfort. And so the industry made a decision that forever changed the geography of technology. They gathered their cables, turned off the air conditioners, and left the cramped streets of the megacities. The digital mind began searching for a new, spacious, and empty body far from prying eyes. This marked the beginning of the era of the Great Migration of Machines. In the early 2000s, the tech giants made a radical and uncompromising decision. They realized that battling worn-out urban infrastructure was too expensive and frankly pointless. The real future demanded empty horizons, cheap land, and a complete absence of neighbors. The great exodus of the first true data centers into the deep American countryside began. The criteria for selecting new territories were harsh, mathematically precise, and pragmatic. They needed cheap land, a cold, stable climate, and access to high-capacity backbone communication channels. But the key resource that ultimately defined the new geography of the internet was cheap industrial electricity. Companies sought out old Soviet hydroelectric plants in America's dying industrial zones. In states like forested Oregon, agricultural Iowa, and North Carolina, drab concrete boxes began to spring up. Outwardly, they most closely resembled logistics center warehouses or giant federal prisons. No signs, no architectural flourishes, a minimum of doors, and a complete absence of windows.
It was the aesthetic of pure, ruthless, and mathematically precise functionality.
The designers of such buildings no longer gave any thought to human comfort. The buildings were constructed solely around the logic of cold air circulation and the routing of power cables. Here, people had become nothing more than rare service personnel, biological appendages to a noisy mechanism. The proportions of the halls were dictated solely by the dimensions of standard 19-inch steel racks. The outward emptiness and lifelessness of these enormous complexes was frighteningly deceptive. Beneath the ground, thick arteries of backbone fiber optic cables stretched toward these faceless gray hangars. Around them, dedicated electrical substations of colossal, unprecedented power sprang up rapidly. These facilities put down deep technological roots, forever altering the infrastructure of entire states. It was then that society developed the illusion of the digital world's infinite resources. There was plenty of space in the deserts, and energy seemed inexhaustible and cheap. Companies built halls the size of several football fields and packed them tightly with gleaming hardware. This industrial scale was intoxicating, leading investors to believe that the physical limits of growth had been overcome forever. But each such expansion of space merely postponed the inevitable physical crisis. Servers were rapidly becoming more powerful, and the density of computing power was growing at a steep exponential rate. What had seemed like a gigantic hangar just yesterday turned out today to be a cramped and overheated box. The problem of suffocating heat from which people had fled the cities caught up with them right in the middle of the wasteland. By hiding its noisy servers out of sight, the industry made the problem simply invisible to society. People continued to use their smartphones carefree, completely unaware of the material cost of every like.
The gap between the light digital experience and the heavy physical reality became total.
Deaf concrete walls hid from the world the beginning of a new large-scale battle with thermodynamics. The architecture of these buildings became a monument to the triumph of function over form, but within these walls, a heat was being generated that could not be ignored or hidden. The hardware demanded not just space, it demanded constant, aggressive cooling. And this demand set off a chain reaction of environmental consequences. The main and most fearsome enemy of any data center is not hackers, but thermodynamics. The laws of physics are inexorable. Every watt of energy spent on useful computations instantly turns into a watt of heat. If this excess heat is not quickly removed, expensive hardware will melt in a matter of minutes. The issue of effective cooling has become the primary engineering obsession of the entire modern industry. At first, engineers tried simply to blow cold air from the street into huge halls.
But street dust, microparticles, and fluctuations in humidity quickly destroyed the sensitive microelectronics on the circuit boards.
Then architects switched to fully enclosed cooling circuits using powerful industrial chillers. These are giant refrigeration units that consumed almost as much energy themselves as the humming servers. The energy cost of this air rescue proved to be completely prohibitive for businesses. To save on expensive electricity, corporations turned to the oldest heat sink on the planet, water. Massive cooling towers began to be built next to data centers, turning them into something resembling nuclear power plants. The complexes began to draw moisture from the surrounding environment with an incredible, frightening veracity. The digital economy became critically dependent on ordinary municipal or artesian water supplies. A single average modern data center can evaporate millions of liters of clean, fresh water per day. Pressurized water flows through heat exchangers, absorbs the heat from the processors, and is released into the atmosphere as white steam. This is a legal, government-sanctioned drying up of entire regions for the sake of keeping invisible algorithms running. In arid states, where water has historically been worth its weight in gold, this has led to silent wars. Local farmers suddenly discovered that deep underground aquifers were rapidly depleting, not because of crops. They are being drained by invisible servers hidden in hangars, serving users on the other side of the planet. A sharp conflict between basic human needs and the appetite of machines became mathematically inevitable. Desperate attempts to optimize this process led to new, even more complex solutions. Advanced liquid cooling systems emerged, where ice-cold water is fed directly to the processors through thin plastic tubes. It closely resembles an artificial circulatory system, densely crisscrossing the dark metal racks.
One wrong move, one microscopic leak, and a short circuit will instantly destroy millions of dollars.
But equipment density has still reached a limit where neither air nor water can keep up. The most advanced and hottest servers are now fully submerged in tanks of a special synthetic fluid. Delicate electronics literally boil in sealed tanks filled with expensive dielectric fluoroketones. It's a surreal sight. The hardware operates at the bottom of the tank, emitting a continuous stream of heat bubbles. Each new generation of silicon processors generates significantly more heat than the previous one. The technology industry is firmly stuck in an endless, exhausting race against the laws of thermodynamics. Cooling has become not just a complex engineering challenge, but the primary factor in the physical survival of clusters. And for this survival, the system is ready to sacrifice the ecology of entire continents. The suffocating heat is merely a byproduct, a secondary consequence of the system's primary technological dependency. The true lifeblood of this colossal mechanism is electricity, supplied in a continuous, perfectly steady stream. A power outage lasting even a single millisecond means catastrophic equipment failure and irretrievable data loss. That is precisely why today's data centers are designed not as warehouse buildings, but as impregnable energy fortresses. On the outskirts of the cluster, you are always greeted by long rows of massive high-voltage transformers. With a hum, they step down the colossal voltage of the transmission lines to a level suitable for delicate consumption. These humming gray metal beasts are the first guardians on the path to the delicate processors. Behind them lies an extremely complex system of power redundancy and paranoid engineering safeguards. If the external city grid suddenly fails, the dark storage rooms instantly spring into action. They are crammed to the ceiling with thousands of heavy lead-acid or lithium batteries. These batteries are capable of keeping the massive facility afloat for just a few critical minutes. Their sole purpose is to buy precious time to start up the complex's main, dirtiest lifesavers. These rescuers are massive industrial diesel generators the size of a locomotive. Deep underground, beneath or near every data center, are buried tanks containing tens of thousands of gallons of fuel. At the slightest glitch, the generators roar to life, belching thick black plumes of exhaust into the sky with a thunderous roar. The cluster is capable of operating completely autonomously for weeks, coolly cutting itself off from the failing external power grid. This is the grim architecture of a technological apocalypse, ready for the end of the world at any moment. But in peacetime, these giants silently devour energy from the public grid at an alarming rate. A single modern server campus consumes far more electricity than the average European industrial city. This insatiable hunger disrupts all familiar patterns of energy distribution on the planet. To meet this demand, old coal-fired power plants, which environmentalists had planned to shut down, are being ramped up to full capacity again. Corporations' loud green declarations are easily shattered by the server's physical need for a constant current. Energy companies are forced to urgently lay new, ultra-high-capacity transmission lines specifically for the needs of big tech. The familiar landscape is changing. Forests are being cut down, and new steel towers for high-voltage lines are being driven into the ground. The physical world is being irreversibly reshaped under the growing weight of invisible digital data. The power grids of entire independent countries are beginning to operate primarily to serve a single industry. We have come very close to the point where electricity has become scarce. Not because of a global shortage of natural resources, it has become scarce because it is being aggressively monopolized by learning algorithms. Every time you turn on a light in your home, you are participating in a hidden competition. Your light bulb is fighting for the right to exist against the pulsing lights of indicators on distant server racks. And in this invisible energy war, algorithms have a much larger budget than humans. Until recently, the growth of the global digital infrastructure was relatively gradual and financially predictable. Data centers quietly processed streaming video, stored personal photos, and handled billions of search queries. It was a stable era of conventional cloud storage, a straightforward logistical problem with known variables. But the emergence of generative artificial intelligence instantly shattered all of the engineers' established mathematical models. Large-scale training of modern neural networks requires a completely different, specialized type of hardware. Instead of conventional central processing units, racks began to be filled en masse with ultra-powerful graphics accelerators. These are massive, incredibly complex, and expensive chips that consume tens of times more electrical energy. The thermal power density per square meter of floor space skyrocketed, shattering all calculations. Data centers built 10 years ago were physically unprepared for such a thermal shock. Their traditional air cooling systems could not cope with the localized, extreme heat of the new, densely packed racks. Power cables melted under the strain, and concrete floors began to creak again under the weight of the reinforced enclosures. The new AI revolution demanded that the old architecture be demolished and everything be rebuilt from scratch. A completely new technological arms race began, with stakes running into tens of billions of dollars. Giant companies are greedily buying up scarce accelerators in batches of hundreds of thousands at a time. They need to be quickly housed somewhere, reliably powered, and aggressively cooled. And here, people with unlimited ambitions and a complete disregard for the old rules of the game enter the scene. In this brutal race, time saved has become more important than aesthetics and thoughtful long-term planning. Decisions are made under the harsh conditions of wartime. Build faster, pack the chips tighter. Thus, the concept of a supercluster emerges rapidly, a massive closed facility where a critical mass of computing power is concentrated. This is no longer merely civilian infrastructure, it is a militarized factory for the production of digital intelligence. The financial cost of entering this game has become categorically prohibitive for everyone except a handful of the wealthiest corporations. Colossal scale has become the primary and most effective weapon of absolute monopoly. Artificial intelligence no longer resides somewhere in an abstract, distributed internet. It resides in specific, heavily guarded hangars, whose exact geographical coordinates are well known to intelligence agencies. The algorithm has taken on a heavy, incredibly expensive, and vulnerable physical form. Each new version of the neural network requires this form to be multiplied exponentially. The technological limit has become not a question of programmers' genius, but a question of the availability of concrete and copper. The industry has reached a point where the ambitions of a single person can reshape the power grid of an entire state. When Elon Musk decided to aggressively enter the AI race with his startup xAI, he took radical action. He categorically refused to drag out the tedious construction process for years, as his sluggish competitors did. He needed the most powerful supercomputer in the world, and he needed it immediately, at any cost. The industrial city of Memphis, Tennessee, was chosen as the site for this unprecedented technological experiment. Musk's team simply leased a massive former factory that had once manufactured large electrical equipment. Inside this colossal empty space, they began rapidly assembling the Colossus cluster. The project involved installing 100,000 of the most powerful graphics processors under a single leaky roof. It was a deliberate act of engineering violence against the old building, which was completely unsuited for such temperatures. The abandoned factory was rapidly transformed into a humming thermonuclear reactor for processing raw data. The assembly speed was insane. It cynically violated every written industry safety standard. Expensive equipment was brought in around the clock, thick wires dragged directly across the dusty floor, ignoring the cable channels. The engineer's main task was to get the machines online as quickly as possible, regardless of the risks. It was a blatant display of brute force, where the end result justified absolutely any technological compromise. But 100,000 overheated chips in one place sparked a local-scale climate disaster. As expected, the local power grid, worn down by years of use, was threatened with immediate collapse from such a massive load. To power the cluster, Musk brought in dozens of huge mobile gas turbine generators on trailers. These units formed a tight ring around the building, filling the air with thick smog and the roar of aircraft engines. The problem of monstrous overheating was solved with the same frightening, primitive engineering straightforwardness. Huge tanks for processed water and portable chillers were scattered chaotically around the complex. The entire cooling system was literally cobbled together on the fly, using whatever could be bought and delivered right then and there. What emerged in Memphis is not a sterile, gleaming white data center of a bright future. It is a dirty, roaring frontline hospital of cutting-edge computing, reeking of diesel and ozone. Musk's project has clearly demonstrated, if you have vast amounts of money, physical barriers can be broken through by brute force. But it has also laid bare and shown the whole world the monstrous vulnerability of such an aggressive approach. This hastily assembled system is operating at its absolute limit, teetering on the brink of a major accident every second. A single weak link, a single pipe rupture, or a generator failure in this chain will bring everything to a halt. The most powerful neural network in the world is held together by tie rods, temporary cables, and noisy turbines. A technological triumph has turned into the ultimate form of engineering fragility. Such an unprecedented concentration of astronomical value and real power inevitably breeds deep institutional fear. A modern hyperscale data center is, in practice, much better protected than many secret military bases. There are no road signs on the outside. The building itself deliberately blends into the landscape, pretending to be something mundane. This architectural camouflage as a gray warehouse is the first, simplest line of psychological defense for the complex. The physical perimeter is tightly surrounded by high fences, equipped with thousands of vibration sensors and thermal imaging cameras. The earthen ramparts around the buildings are designed to guarantee the stopping of a heavy truck packed with explosives. The roads leading to the complex are artificially curved and narrowed to prevent vehicles from gaining enough speed for a direct ramming attack. This is architecture born of pure paranoia, cast in reinforced concrete and hidden behind manicured lawns. Getting inside such a facility means going through a long series of humiliating security checkpoints. Employees must surrender any personal gadgets, pass through biometric retinal scanners and sensitive weighing platforms. The security booth locks tightly until the system verifies that exactly one person of the exact required weight has entered. Inside, a sterile, soulless, algorithmic control reigns over every breath of the biological staff. Armed guards patrol only the outer perimeter. People with weapons are strictly prohibited inside. A single accidental shot could pierce the water-cooling pipes and destroy a cluster worth billions. Every human movement is recorded by neural networks. Every open server cabinet requires the shift supervisor's digital signature. People here are viewed solely as the primary vulnerability, a source of unpredictability, errors, and filth. The perfect machine has shielded itself with armor and protects itself from its own imperfect creators. But the main invisible threat comes not from saboteurs outside, but from within the physical computing process itself. The vibration from millions of hard drives and industrial fans creates a constant background noise that is destructive to microchips. Engineers battle daily against acoustic waves that can literally kill delicate equipment through resonance. The noise inside the server rooms is so loud, dense, and sharp that without headphones, a person would be deafened in minutes. This endless hum is the sound of information being processed by the world, the tangible physical voice of digital space. It vibrates in the chest, constantly reminding us of the material density of that very illusory cloud. The complex's security protects this vibration from any, even the slightest, attempt to interrupt it. In the last century, developed countries fought fiercely for control over oil fields and sea straits. Today, global geopolitical hegemony is determined exclusively by the number of computing clusters on a state's sovereign territory. Whoever physically controls the hot servers on which AI is trained will control the economy of tomorrow. Data centers have rapidly become new sites of strategic technological and nuclear deterrence. The governments of world powers have suddenly, with alarming belatedness, realized that their digital sovereignty is illusory. All citizens' personal data, intelligence secrets, and infrastructure management algorithms lie in hangars owned by private billionaires. The state is now desperately trying to regain control by forcing companies to build data centers exclusively on their home soil. A harsh era of strict digital protectionism and the erection of new concrete borders for data is beginning. But transnational corporations are actively resisting, creating their own networks that are not subject to any single local law. They are building secure clusters in neutral waters or in countries with the most lenient tax regimes. A quiet, hidden war is underway for the roots of undersea fiber optic cables connecting entire continents. The physical infrastructure of the internet is gradually becoming the primary and most effective tool of international political blackmail. The owners of these mega clusters wield real power, completely incomparable to that of temporarily elected politicians. They can technically cut off an entire country from the global digital market with a single centralized server update. They harshly dictate terms to city mayors, demanding massive tax breaks and free water in exchange for investment. Through their owners, invisible algorithms openly dictate their will to the old institutions of power. This is a completely new type of feudalism where humming server farms serve as impregnable castles. Vassals voluntarily offer up their data, and the powerful suzerain grants them temporary access to artificial intelligence. And like any pragmatic feudal lord, the cluster owner ruthlessly exploits the surrounding lands for the prosperity of his stronghold. Servers have become the new gold standard of global domination. We are rapidly approaching the inevitable moment of absolute global overload of the entire physical system. The exponential growth of computing power is coming head-to-head with the linear scarcity of the planet's actual natural resources. There is still plenty of space on the map, but there are almost no remaining points where cheap energy, fresh water, and fiber optics ideally intersect. The geography of planet Earth has simply stopped forgiving big tech's gross scaling errors. In modern Ireland, multinational data centers already consume nearly a fifth of all the electricity produced in the country. Local governments are forced to impose strict moratoriums on the construction of new clusters to save civilian grids from collapse. The tech industry is desperately trying to break out of this energy dead end by proposing increasingly outlandish architectural designs. They suggest submerging massive servers in icy oceans or sending them into a cold orbit around Earth. But every such radical solution only makes logistics incredibly complicated and creates thousands of new points of failure. Underwater steel capsules housing servers quickly deteriorate due to aggressive saltwater corrosion and pressure. Space-based orbital servers are physically inaccessible for routine repairs if a cheap connector burns out. Any attempt to escape the physical constraints of Earth's gravity and thermodynamics is bound to fail. We are forever chained to the surface of this planet by the monstrous weight of our own growing digital burden. What once began as a light tool for liberation from physical labor has itself become the heaviest industry. We have simply replaced brick factories producing dirty steel with concrete hangars, producing neural network outputs. The chimneys of the new industry smoke just the same, only now it is steam from giant cooling towers. The absolute technological limit will be reached not in elegant program code, but in the cross-section of an overheated copper cable. An algorithm can be infinitely complex and intelligent, but it will inevitably run up against the transformer's ability to withstand the current. Physics always has the final, most brutal word in any human illusion of infinite growth. Concrete and metal can no longer stretch to keep pace with the ambitions of code. Large-scale, accelerated experiments like Musk's Memphis supercluster are merely the first harbingers of a new era of total depletion. Machine learning itself does not create anything material, but it requires the continuous burning of real physical fuel. We literally throw coal, natural gas, and uranium into the furnace every single day just to get a smart chatbot. This is the most grandiose and energy-intensive alchemy in the history of human civilization. Every line of program code generated by a neural network, every funny synthetic image, leaves a deep thermal footprint in the atmosphere. Self-learning systems are becoming increasingly voracious, requiring entire terawatts of energy to maintain their virtual neural structures. In pursuit of digital immortality and superintelligence, we are accelerating the physical aging of the planet's entire infrastructure many times over. Tech corporations are trying to cleverly mask this cost by mass purchasing carbon credits and planting young trees. But all of this is merely convenient accounting tricks for the press that in no way change the actual physics of the process on the ground. Gas turbines continue to spin with a roar, millions of liters of clean water evaporate, and copper melts. A data center is fundamentally incapable of photosynthesis. It is created solely to consume ceaselessly. The new form of existence for a digital entity is an insatiable black hole of real earthly resources. The data center has forever ceased to be merely a passive, cold repository of humanity's accumulated memory. Before our very eyes, it is transformed into an active, red-hot brain that demands a continuous and abundant supply of energy. And it is, without a doubt, ready to take that energy away from real, living cities if energy providers are forced to choose. With our own hands, we have created a deity that lives in a remote concrete bunker and feeds on alternating current. And now we are historically obligated to keep it fed without interruption. Otherwise, our familiar, comfortable world will collapse along with the servers. This is the true, terrifying price of progress, one that is never mentioned in the glossy press releases of startups. The machine has become the planet's primary consumer. Take another look at your sleek smartphone. Open an empty search bar or ask yet another mundane question to a popular neural network. At this very moment, there is no weightless cloud, no magic, no information floating in the ether. There is only the ruthless, dense physical contact of copper, silicon, and immense voltage. Somewhere far out in the wasteland, behind thick concrete walls, a laser flashes in an optical fiber within the sterile, cold darkness. A massive industrial fan whines as it revs up, forcing icy air through the chip's scorching heat sink. A heavy diesel generator shuddered as usual, on standby for disaster. Every second of your illusion of digital ease is paid for by the heavy labor of a colossal industrial machine. These gigantic, ugly structures have transformed the landscape and ruthlessly subjugated the economy to remain invisible to the average person. They have rapidly grown from cramped office backrooms into architectural monsters that directly dictate the policies of entire nations. We have built them impregnable temples of steel and concrete, voluntarily surrendering rivers and power plants to them. But this inhuman scale does not make the system invulnerable. It merely makes its potential collapse immeasurably more destructive. The power of artificial algorithms carries a colossal, destructive physical weight. And right now, that weight is mercilessly crushing the ground in Memphis, Iowa, and all over the world. The virtual cloud has ultimately proven heavier than cast iron.